Old Evie stretches the word out as she tries to get her father to pay attention to her. Please, I don't. Evie! Leland stops and finally turns to face the girl. Placing his fists against his hips, he looks down at his daughter. What did I tell you before we came out here? Evie sighs and folds her arms across her chest. She rolls her eyes before looking at her father again. You said we use too much tech in this house, and we're getting a break from all of it on this vacation. So knock it off. Leland's fingers slowly clench into fists at his sides. His voice deepens a notch as he speaks again. Now, where's your brother? Dad, would you stop and listen to me for 1 minute, please? I hate fishing, and that's all we've done for 2 stupid weeks. You won't hike or make s'mores or do anything I want to do. You even said I could pick a trail to hike, but you lied. It's just fishing, fishing, fishing. Why can't I just have my phone back? I don't... Knock it off! The little girl quails at the angry voice. Tears start to form in her brown eyes. She steps backward and turns her eyes toward the ground, realizing she may have pushed it too far. Again. Leland takes a deep breath and slowly releases it. Uncurling his fingers, he quickly jams his hands into his pockets, closes his eyes, and counts backwards from 10. Finally, he opens his eyes, forcing his voice into a quieter tone, even as he speaks through gritted teeth. He starts over. I said, no. You will get your phone back when we head home. When are we leaving? This time her voice is tentative, barely audible over the sound of the wind in the trees. Tomorrow, Leland growls the word. He'd rather never go back to the real world. But the supplies he packed are nearly gone by now, and rent is past due. Even once they get back, there's no telling how long it will take for him to find a new job. He can't keep delaying their return. For now, Eric and I are going fishing. You can knock off the damned waterworks and join us, or you can stay by the tents and entertain yourself. What'll it be? Evie sniffles loudly and swipes a hand across her face as she tries in vain to stop the tears from falling. She opens her mouth to respond, but the lump in her throat makes it hard to find her voice. Spotting Eric a little way up the path, Leland picks up the fishing poles, walks around Evie, and starts toward the boy. You know where to find us if you quit this bratty attitude. Behind Leland, a timid voice mutters, You always like him more. Leland stops and grinds his teeth together. Without a word, he continues down the path with long, quick strides. Eric comes bounding up beside his father. Hey, Dad! I found a big lizard over there under... Leland marches past, and the child's voice fades away as he hurries to keep up with his father. Eric looks up toward Leland, and then stops to look back at the camp. He rushes to catch up again. His twin sister is nowhere to be seen. Wait, where's Evie? Not coming. Why not? I thought she... The boy's words stop once more as he notices the fishing poles in his father's hands. We're fishing again? But the last couple of nights, you told Evie we'd go on that trail before... Leland shoots a glare at the boy, then turns his eyes back to the path. Eric opens his mouth to protest again, but thinks better of it. Pressing his lips together, he follows his father to the lake. Evie sits on the muddy ground beside the tent and hurls a small rock at a nearby tree. Its impact sends a tiny chunk of bark flying. Grabbing the bottom edge of her pale yellow t-shirt, she swipes the fabric across her face to remove the last traces of her tears. For a moment, a row of dark purple bruises is visible across her belly. The marks disappear from view again as she pulls the edge of her shirt back into place. Pushing herself to her feet, Evie stands there and looks around. She's made up her mind. She marches down the hill to the rusting silver minivan and opens the passenger door. A moment later, she retrieves her phone from the glove box and presses the power button. The battery is more than half drained, and the signal is non-existent. With the device in hand, the girl marches back up the hill, over to the trailhead, and disappears. The sun has started to sink low in the sky, and Eric has long since wandered away from the water to sit in the shade and look for bugs. His fishing pole sits abandoned in the small, wave-worn rocks by the water's edge. Leland stands on the dock with his hook in the water. Half a dozen empty beer cans sit on the dock at his feet, while the cans from yesterday float on the water's surface below him. He looks out across the lake, shielding his eyes against the bright, setting sun. His brow furrows. For the first time, he realizes just how quiet the entire trip has been. The camping spot had always been relatively private, but he'd never been here so long without seeing at least a few other campers. He leans forward to peer around a tree at the water's edge. All of a sudden, there's a tug on the line. Leland quickly reels it in, and just as the hook appears above the water's surface, the fish breaks free and falls, quickly swimming away and disappearing into the depths of the lake. Leland curses under his breath and tosses the fishing pole onto the wooden dock. He stomps away, stumbling ever so slightly as he searches for his son. "Eric! Over here!" The boy pops out from behind a bush and waves. Leland heads over toward Eric. "Let's go. Midas." The man's voice trails away as he notices movement behind some nearby plants. Slowing his pace, he keeps moving forward, stooping down and trying to see what's behind there. Eric also notices and turns his attention that way, following a few steps behind his father. "Hello?" Another slight rustle comes from behind the bush. Leland stops. He reaches out with one hand and slowly pushes aside the leafy branches. There, crouched in the weeds and hidden by shadow, is a woman. Her black-streaked eyes meet his wide-eyed stare. She opens her blood-encrusted mouth. As she leaps up, she lets out an eardrum-shattering, shrill roar. She lunges towards Leland. Eric's eyes go wide. He screams and sprints back toward the camp. Leland blinks and stumbles backwards. The black-eyed woman swings at him. Her long nails tear into the flesh of his arm and break through his stupor. He rushes forward, slamming his fist into her chest and sending her staggering back. Pivoting on his heel, Leland sprints back toward the water. His heart hammers against his chest as he looks for anything he can use as a weapon. Footsteps pound behind him. He skids to a halt next to the water, snatches up Eric's fishing pole, and spins around. He stumbles to the side and blinks quickly, trying to force his eyes back into focus. She gets close. Leland swings the pole, and it whips through the air, landing against her neck with a loud thwack. The rod snaps in two, and the end of it dangles now from the clear line. The attacker is thrown off balance, and her ankle twists underneath her. She stumbles forward and falls to the ground. Roaring, she leaps up again and spins back toward Leland. Leland rushes forward with a yell, holding the broken rod out in front of him. He drives the fishing pole into her stomach. Blood spews out and runs down her front and over his hands. The crazed woman's heels dig into the ground, but Leland overpowers her. He shoves her backward until she falls into the murky lake water. She flails, trying to find her footing. Leland turns and runs. Rounding a bend in the path, Leland hears the sound of a horn honking. Eric is sitting in the passenger seat, wide-eyed and waving frantically. From somewhere at Leland's back, a roar rings out and turns his blood to ice. Leland rushes down the hill, pulls open the silver door of the minivan, and flings himself into the driver's seat. Shoving one hand in his pocket, he fishes for the keys. "Dad!" Leland looks up just in time to see the woman barreling down the hill. Dripping wet, and blood gushes from the open wound in her stomach. His heart leaps into his throat. He finally catches the keys, yanks them free, and jams them into the ignition. She's only a few steps away. He throws the gear shift into reverse. Gravel goes flying as the minivan picks up speed. The woman gives chase but can't keep up. Leland twists the wheel, hits the brakes, and switches to drive. The black-eyed woman disappears into the rear-view mirror as they make their way down the road. "Are you all right?" Leland tears his eyes away from the road long enough to look at his son. Eric nods. "Are you?" Leland glances down at the deep gashes that line his forearm. Blood drips from the wound, leaving dark stains on the blue seats of the minivan. He turns his eyes back to the road. Yeah, I'll be fine. Eric's face crumples. Dad, what? His voice breaks as he tries to form the question. What about Evie?